Afternoon, everyone, and we're glad that you showed up. We thought there was some interesting competition around the corner in the consumer group and that you might be there. So we're glad that you're all interested enough in exploring mobile and wireless opportunities. And we really do have a very experienced and very relevant set of panelists here today. So let me introduce them quickly. Here to my left, I have Joel Jewitt, who is with the Motorola Good Technology Group now, and we'll talk about Joel's recent sale to Motorola and how that happened, I'm sure, in a little while. And Joel and I actually share a common heritage. We both work for Palm. Joel, in fact, was one of the early founders of the company and had some interesting experiences there. And then I think we touched base actually with a startup that was probably about 5 years too early. And maybe we can talk about timing as well as we go on. Then Jim Madsen, and long title I saw, Jim, EVP and Chief Business Development Officer of NextWave Wireless. So thanks for traveling up from San Diego today, right? And NextWave is a very interesting company. It develops technologies and also acts as a carrier, essentially, in the wireless space, and has an orientation towards delivering what you call a living in motion lifestyle. And I think we all live that to some degree. So again, we could explore that. And then Dipchand Nishar from Google, so thanks again for coming. And Deep is responsible for the mobile products for Google, and we've seen some of those from Gmail to search and Maps, of course, and we're all interested to know what's coming next. And I'm interested, of course, to know whether those products will be built or bought. And I'm sure Scott Raney is to the left of Deep, is also interested in some of the same things. So Scott has built quite a portfolio at Redpoint in the mobile sector, and his companies include letstalk.com, JumpTap, MobiTV, and how do you pronounce it? Mobilogen, yeah, okay, that one. We can talk about that too. And Redpoint have also invested in Amped, which obviously is a significant development in the MVNO space, so a very exciting company there as well. So what I'd like to do, rather than talk about our biographies since birth in terms of introducing ourselves, is to really introduce the panelists by asking them some questions. And so I have a list of questions here, and I think actually some of the panelists have questions they'd like to ask each other, which is fine by me, and then we'd like to pass some of the questions over to you as well. So I have a question for Scott first, and I have many reasons for asking this question actually. Sure. But what was your last investment in the mobile sector, and why?
Well, there's an investment that I'm in the process of closing right now. So I can't talk about the specifics or the company name, but essentially it's a mobile application that facilitates communications, integrated communications application for IM, for other social networking features, social media sharing, in addition to allowing people to actually, using a data application, lower the cost of international long distance and international SMS, so essentially playing an arbitrage game where using the data channel as a control layer and the voice channel to actually conduct the voice actually radically transform the economics of completing calls. And this is a company that's actually working direct to consumer. It's not working through carriers, which is a very unique play here, and they've managed to actually accrue a significant number of active users in a viral mode, which is very, very unique and something that we should explore a little bit on this panel. But for us, what we've been looking for is a way to play mobile and wireless without actually having to beat our heads against the wall trying to get carriers to work with us. And this was one way that we felt like we could do that. So. Okay,
well, we'll come back to that because I think this whole issue of how you develop a mobile company and the whole issue of the carrier and how you work with them is really an interesting sort of conversation to be had, I think, as you're looking for new businesses as well. So, Joel, one of the things that I think we have not seen in the mobile space is a really good bunch of significant deals. And so, as investors and as entrepreneurs, you want to build great businesses, but at some point you'd like to think there could be an exit, whether it's an IPO or a sale to a major company. Now, Good was one of those. I'd like to understand why you sold Good as opposed to going it alone and maybe doing something in the public markets, and why you think there aren't more big deals in the mobile sector.
Okay. Well, Good Technology was not a clever company. It was go after something obvious and raise a ton of money and pound at it type of a play. Our strategy in wireless has always been there's a steep curve of applications that people are going to use. There's a steep sort of bell curve. If you get too far outside the middle, you can miss the timing really easily, and there are tons and tons of dead bodies and bone piles lying around of people that were too early or too clever about the applications. And so our strategy is to go right at the middle of a very obvious one, which I still think is an important consideration in wireless because there's a little bit of a tighter opportunity there than, say, doing a PC application. So we're basically slugging it out in email, and we are subject to forces of any other larger company that's interested in the same application. And what happened for us in general was a lot of players came into the space, and the open air got tighter. In particular, Microsoft came in. They've been threatening to be email providers in the wireless space for years and years, and they really only had to get to the point where they were, within 30 percentage points of what someone else could do to start creating some noise. And that was the kind of the final entry for us that made the environment tighter. And then mobile device manufacturers decided they wanted to add applications, and so there was this wave coming through of mobile device manufacturers looking at applications like ours, and Motorola came and made an offer that we thought was fair for the circumstances, and we took it. So for about $500 million. It was 7 years of hard work, and it's a good exit, but I think we had to respond to the times.
And how are you finding working within Motorola so far?
So far, it's okay. The Good Technology Group is a wholly owned group, same building, same group of people. So it's going to be a while before we really see how it's going to get played out there.
Yeah. This whole issue of Microsoft it's been around for a while, actually. And Microsoft have for many years declared that they were going to play in the mobile space as they do in the PC sector. And there was a lot of resistance to Microsoft, although we are seeing more of them today, particularly in certain geographies and certain segments, smartphones and so on. But of course now we have another big player that's looking to play in the mobile space with a slightly different approach. So Deep, it would be great to hear from you as you're responsible for the mobile products at Google, what you're looking to do. And we've heard about some of your products, but we'd like to hear about a few more.
Sure. So the way we are approaching the mobile space is, quite different than actually the way we are approach the web space and the way many major players are approaching it. So despite the fact that the phone is really a computer from the standpoint of hardware and processing power. So, today's mainstream feature phone is roughly equivalent to a PC you could buy in 1998 in terms of capacity, in terms of processing power. We don't want to view it as a replacement to your PC, especially in markets such as Europe and North America, where, anyone with reasonable access can get to a full-fledged PC within 30 to 60 minutes and a nice, comfortable chair and a good broadband connection. So trying to replicate that experience on the small form factor device is probably a bad thing to do. And lots of bodies will be found along the road that has tried to do that. Including Microsoft in some ways that focused a lot on productivity applications. And now if you look at their product portfolio, they're shifting more towards a consumer-based approach on mobile. So the way we are looking at mobile is really along three user experiences, if you will. Right. The first user experience is around personalization and personalized services. This is a device that everyone carries with them all the time. Some research report that suggests about 60% of Japanese children sleep with their phones next to their bed. Thankfully, my kids sleep with their teddy bears next to their beds. But eventually everyone will get to that point. It's a very personal device. It's not something that you share, even if you're a child. How can you make that experience better? And that's very different than a PC. People talk about personalization on the PC front, but it's very different. The second aspect is around location-based services. Although you may carry your laptop with you, and if you have Wi-Fi connectivity and you can figure out where exactly you are based on the cell towers, etc., that's not really the location-based experience that you're going to get, because most phones actually have GPS-enabled chips, and you can do many integrated and nice things there. Our sort of first experience and first showing to the market, if you will, was the integrated GPS plus mobile maps product that we launched with Helio, in time for the holiday season last year, and it's done very well both in terms of user adoption as well as usage, which is a key metric in this space, because many people will try it and they will churn very, very fast, as my other friends on the panel will tell you. The final thing is, how do you create a fixed mobile conversion experience? And when I say fixed mobile conversions, I deviate again slightly from the industry parlance, where if you talk to an OEM or a carrier, they'll call FMC more as a dual mode phone, right? So you can do Wi-Fi as well as voice calls on the same phone. The way I'm thinking about it and the way Google thinks about it is more about, you have data in the cloud, right? It's there, it's yours. You set it up exactly the way you like it. Also, you like to access it the way you like it. You should be able to get it in the format you want, whether it be through your PC keyboard, it be through your phone's dial pad, it be through your Sony PSP, or anything else that will allow you to access that data in the cloud. And again, that's a user experience that companies such as Google can bring into the market and direct to consumer, also working with carriers and others. So that's really our approach into mobile.
Thanks, and we'll come back to some of those points a little later on. Jim, I did want to at least give you a chance to introduce yourself to the audience here. And certainly with NextWave, you're involved in many aspects of this mobile ecosystem, and you're also making a bet on WiMAX. So could you give us a sense of your approach to the market and why WiMAX?
Sure. So raise your hand if you've heard of Wi-Fi or ever used it. Okay. Raise your hand if you've ever used WiMAX. How many have ever really, or would you say you're comfortable with what WiMAX is? Okay, half. You're probably about 5 times more than the population as a whole. So if you take our company name, NextWave, I think it really captures well what you see in the wireless industry. We've gone through 3 waves. The first was analog cellular networks. The second were time division-based networks, including GSM, which is the most popular technology for mobile communications. The third is CDMA, code division networks, and that people associate that with Qualcomm. They also associate it with 3G in Europe and in Asia, as well as WCDMA, as well as HSUPA and DPA. It's very hard to talk about telecom without acronyms. I'm sorry for those of you who don't know the acronyms. But all of those are versions of code division. Well, the 4th wave of mobile communications is upon us, and it's OFDMA, orthogonal frequency division multiplexing access. WiMAX,
guys, now who could repeat that to me?
especially after an LPF. So the OFDMA is really what is coming next, and it's going to be a part of the rest of our lives and careers who are in mobile communications. WiMAX is the first ecosystem built around OFDMA, what does it mean for all of us? Well, what's coming next is very simple. Wireless is the future of communications. Broadband is the future of all forms of networks. The key is to be able to have a flat IP core wireless network to offer any of the services that you've referred to and you'll be talking about, all the things that is the magic of good software. Today's networks around the world are not a flat IP core. Yes, you can get an eVideo network from Verizon or Sprint, but it is not, it's based off of a circuit switch architecture. WiMAX is the first standard that is based from the ground up on a flat IP core for mobile broadband. And that's what's very exciting and why we've made a significant bet. Now, for our team, a lot of us came out of the group that developed CDMA at Qualcomm. And one of the things we learned from that is you have to think about designing an end-to-end system. You don't make a BMW out of a Yugo by putting new tires on it. You have to design it from the ground up. And to make a very robust architecture, you have to be able to think at the device level, through the whole system level to what's in the network infrastructure. So we're heavily involved in systems engineering, standards. It takes a lot of money. It's not the type of thing that normally you'd have as a $10 million A round and a follow-up B and C rounds. But it's an area that we think is going to form the foundation for a lot of the great applications that you all might be thinking in starting a business in. And that's why we're making a big bet on the chip side, on the system side, and on the software side of WiMAX.
How much money are you talking about?
Well, the management put in $550 million to keep control of the company to start. We did a convertible debenture of $300 million. So in the first year and a half, we put $850 in, and we went public recently without an IPO. We didn't feel we needed to do any more dilution at that moment, and the stock's trading under the symbol WAVE as a public company. So that's how we started things.
Interesting. So, any of you want to raise $850 million? Maybe you can tell how to do it. So I'd like to go back to Scott, actually, and this is somewhat an obvious question, but I think that I'd like everyone on the panel to answer this question from their sort of point of view, obviously. And Scott raised a couple of points in his opening remarks that I thought were interesting. So we often get asked by people like you, if you were starting a new business today, what sector of the mobile industry would you focus on? What trends would you pursue? What technologies might be interesting? So, Scott, you talked about some aspects of your most recent investment, and how do you look at? How would you advise the entrepreneurs here today to look at opportunities, and what are some of the interesting factors that you would consider?
Well, I think it should be noted that wireless is a very difficult space to enter into without some context and experience. There are a lot of structural impediments in this industry, a lot of relationships which ultimately determine whether or not you have a strong likelihood of success or not. You need to know how to navigate these relationships and understand the value chain and ecosystem quite well. I think, though, if I'm going to put on my hat, my optimistic hat, and think about the future and where we'd like to see things go, we like to draw the analogy between where the internet was in kind of the mid-'90s and where wireless is now. We're at a point now where we're kind of moving beyond dial-up to just getting to the point where we're starting to see broadband access that's being put in place. You're just now getting to the point where you've got PCs powerful enough to do a lot of very interesting things. You're starting to see standardization of components on the phone to an extent that allow you to do kind of create applications that then can be widely distributed and adopted by consumers. We're also, I guess, we're betting on the carriers loosening their grip on what the experiences look like on these devices and their control of the user experience. And so if you think that all these things play out in a way that they played out, very much like how AOL morphed into an environment where you had broadband and a very open environment for people to actually create content experiences and deliver them to consumers. If you think that that is going to play out here in the mobile space, and I do, then the opportunities are very rich. I mean, you could begin to think about this space much the same way that an entrepreneur would think about the early days of the internet, where you can create applications, you can get these applications deployed in a widespread way on consumer devices and try to monetize through any number of forms. One of the great things about mobile is that there are a number of different ways to actually bill and monetize behaviors and activity. So I think that we're going to see this kind of wholesale transformation of what this space will look like, and it's going to open up the door for a lot of very interesting opportunities going in the future. I think that the things that Google are doing now, though, is exactly the right way to think about this, which is you don't want to start and create something. You don't want to do YouTube for mobile, because YouTube's going to do YouTube for mobile. You need to think very differently about the experience. You need to try to do something that's unique and creative, that leverages the utility of the device and the fact that it's a portable mobile device, and also that you understand probably more importantly, understand the constraints and limitations of the device. But try to create something, an application that you think consumers will adopt and use on a regular basis that, again, is unique to that device and that experience. And so that's one area to go. I'll leave it at that. I could go on about a bunch of different areas, but I think that's one of the places that affords opportunity for young entrepreneurs who maybe don't have a lot of experience in mobile. These types of consumer apps and an open environment like that would be a very exciting place to play.
Yeah, I was going to ask you anyway to talk about some of the implications, and obviously you were in the productivity side, but where might you see that?
I like how Scott started, especially for young people. I think the home run way, the entrepreneur's way to look at this is there's an unbelievable curve of technology being poured into these devices that doesn't care who wants it or who's going to use it. I mean, if you look at the curve of how much memory is going to be in these devices, how much processing power, and Scott tells us to himself all the time because it's so hard right now, and so does Deep and everyone else here. That the curve's unbelievable. There's going to be so much real estate to do amazing things on these devices, which are by people's beds, that it's just mind-boggling. And it's going to be the next gigantic place to build incredibly significant, incredibly valuable companies. None of us in the panel here knows exactly which year things really open up, and it is hard now. But if you have the time and the courage and the passion, you will overlook how hard it is right now and get into this space. The other comment I would make about it is it's the type of thing where you can be specialized and be specifically good about it, good at this technology. There are twists and turns. There are unique things about it. If you get into it and learn it and get the relationships, if some carpetbaggers come in later because the market finally opens up and people are making a lot of money and they haven't learned what you have learned, you will kick their butt. I mean, even now, it's so clear this thing's going to be like, it's a small group of people that really know what's going on, and that will persist for quite a while. So if you invest now and learn that knowledge, you will be advantaged in making money. One thing I've heard, and I don't want to hog the mic, one thing I've heard that I've really loved is when people say, what if the phone was the only thing I could do these applications on? What if the phone was the only place I was going to do my computing? And as Scott said, it's not bringing YouTube to this thing. It's not getting in between the desktop and the phone. It's thinking about the phone as the place. And the applications I've seen where people thought that way are so much better, so much more impactful. The one thing about it is, though, it happens first in countries outside of the U.S. I'm mixing a lot of themes that are going to come up here, but in other countries besides the U.S., it is their computer. In India and Bangladesh and China and other places, this is their computer. That is the right way to think about it. That is the way to honor the potential that's in these phones, is to think of them as the place where people are going to go. In the U.S., it's not quite that way. And so a lot of the best opportunities, if you're thinking about phones this way, are going to be outside the U.S. in the beginning, because people are thinking that way. And the applications you write or sell will be right for those environments. In the U.S., there's still a little bit of noise between desktops and PCs. I'm very passionate about this, obviously, and I won't hog the mic anymore, but
so can I follow up on that with Deep? And by the way, I actually keep my phone by my bed because I use it as an alarm, actually. It's loud, sadly. Anyway, I wanted to explore with you, when you're looking, I mean, you obviously have resource internally in Google. When you're looking at applications, do you do what Joel suggested, look outside of the US? Because, you know, phones are used differently in other countries. And we've talked for a long time about the US being behind other countries. I'm not so sure it's so behind now. It's different. But how do you look at it? Because you have, you know, a huge global marketplace.
Right. And, you know, the focus we have is that we want to build a global platform, but we understand that in mobile, it's going to be very, very localized. And by localization, I don't just mean, you know, putting in Unicode in your code so that you can translate it easily, but really thinking deeply about the local needs. I mean, I personally am on a plane at least 30 to 40% of my time, and it's not to exotic destinations like New York, it's more to exotic destinations like Seoul and Tokyo and, you know, Bangalore and other places, precisely for that particular reason. You know, I'll go back to this theme also, just to summarize what Scott and Joel were saying and what we see a lot of also. The name of the game here is, how much is your staying power? So basically means what is the outcome you're going to look for if you're going to start a company in this space or create a product or what have you. So if you're, all you want is have 10,000 users and do a quick flip, any play will do, really, because if you have a marketing whiz who will create that buzz for you, and you can do this pretty inexpensively. Okay, getting that kind of stuff is not very hard.
So our job is really easy, piece of cake. Just do
Yeah, unfortunately, you know, the IRR that you're probably placing on yourself will not afford that, right? So you want to pitch in your own money, you know, put in a couple $1 million of your own kitty.
Or $550 million.
Yeah, of your own kitty, right? So different strokes for different folks. You know, and you can do that. The second is, what geography are you going to look at? So the US is actually an incredibly hard market to penetrate, precisely because of the economics of the ecosystem here. The carrier subsidize a phone, which means you can't get anything on a phone, even if you know, if your close of kin ran one of the big device OEMs in the world, right? Because you just can't. The carrier will say you can't do it. But it's different in other parts of the world where phones are not subsidized. That's just a very small instance. Really learning, I went to HBS, so I'll put forth Porter's 5 forces here. But if you really understanding the forces in this market are very critical, very, very different than the internet. And we've all sort of grown on the 98 through 2003 Web 1.0, Web 2.0 phenomenon. We think everything's easy. It's a piece of cake. It's not in this market anymore. You have to analyze the ecosystem really, really well. But I digress from the point that you really have to also, in the different geographies where you want to attack, you have to understand what is it that users want. So in Japan, quick example, texting is a big phenomenon everywhere, including the US, right? SMS, everyone uses it. And in Asia, it's like, in China, people do it about 1 billion text messages a day, okay? Japan, no one texts at all. So all of a sudden, you have a texting product. You have to now think of a different way to penetrate the Japanese market, where, by the way, the data ARPUs are the highest anywhere in the world. And people make a lot of money. So when we launch search over SMS in other markets, we launch it over email in Japan, because people use email a lot out there. It's a very small example, but that's how you have to approach the different markets.
Yeah, I think these are all things that maybe some of you want to ask about when we open up to questions as well. But Jim, could we just talk a little bit about the enabling technologies again, and maybe not just WiMAX, but we've talked about some of the applications, and obviously in order to enable some of them, you do need broadband, for example. I mean, can you just talk about some of the enabling?
Can I add to that question too?
Yeah.
And because you're doing your own thing, will you create an environment for entrepreneurs that might not be currently available for in standard carriers or existing carriers?
Great questions. So to answer everything that you've asked, I ask you to think about 2 numbers: 1 billion units a year, $2 trillion. Okay. First number is something that the world saw for the first time in its history last year. Last year was the first time in history that 1 billion cell phones were sold. I ask you, what other piece of consumer electronics moves 1 billion units a year? There's nothing even close to it. That's 10 times the number of laptop computers. In 5 years, Apple has sold a grand total of 70 million iPods. And last year, about 25 million. So it's a 40 to 50 to 1 difference. So the numbers are staggering. 2 trillion is the estimated value of radio spectrum in this world. And it's said that radio spectrum is the oil of the 21st century. It's what's going to make it possible. So if you think about how, as an entrepreneur, you can be like a remora and latch on to the $2 trillion a year spectrum industry to make that even more valuable or make you better efficient use of it, there's lots of ideas. The other is, if you've got something that can go into some portion of those 1 billion phones a year, there's great opportunities. And I'll talk about some nitty-gritty things. Filter design, RF front ends. There's huge opportunities for continuing to improve that. Battery technology has not followed Moore's law. And a lot of these things that we're talking about use energy. And how are you going to be able to get more milliamp hours per cubic millimeter is a huge opportunity. Display technology. There's some very great technology come out of Korea called AMOLED. When you see it, it'll blow you away, but you can't make it more than 2 inches diagonal today. It's not cost effective. There's a lot of other display technologies of being able to, if the phone were your only computer, of being able to display it on the wall. So there's lots of things that are hardware-based that I think are interesting businesses. But it doesn't have to be licensed area alone. I think there's great opportunities to be advanced antenna systems for Wi-Fi and other unlicensed networks. We recently announced an acquisition of a firm called Go Networks, entrepreneurial company, world leader in an area called advanced beamforming technology. They have brainiac PhDs working there, but that's an area that it doesn't take a huge amount of capital to improve antenna systems that have huge impacts. How many of you are familiar with the RUS program run by the U.S. Department of Agriculture? That's a multi-billion-dollar program to bring broadband to rural communities in the United States. And you can get funding to build out Muni Wi-Fi networks to bring that to market without spectrum. It's a different way of getting into the business. One other area is, how many of you are familiar with the acronym DLNA?
You didn't realize we were getting tested when you came in here.
So if you all raised your hand, I wouldn't talk about it. That's an area called digital. It's an alliance, Digital Living Network Alliance. It's exactly what you all are talking about. It's about removing the silos, and that you can start watching a movie on your computer, have it move to your television, finish it on your cell phone. Being able to create a movie on your camera on your phone, be able to finish the editing on your laptop computer. It's all about what you had said earlier, living in motion. And this is a group of consumer electronic companies to build on what's called UPnP, Universal Plug and Play, but building a stack that allows myriad devices from any manufacturer to naturally work together with each other. And if you look at what DLNA is doing, there's a lot of cool applications without a lot of capital. One could start a business. To your question about as a carrier, when we started NextWave originally, we were the first company to say we're going to own last mile spectrum, but not put our brand name with it. We're going to be a carrier's carrier and wholesale our airtime to others. Well, the world's moved ahead quite a bit from circuit switch voice to an all IP core with gigabytes per day instead of minutes per month. And we remain very committed to working with anyone who has a brand name and a consumer relationship to be able to get access to the technology and spectrum we're bringing together with other partners to build a nationwide WiMAX network that they can brand and go to market under their name and have complete liberty to sell. And that avoids all the CapEx on their balance sheets. So we're a very strong supporter of the notion of where MVNOs are going to go in an all wireless broadband world.
Okay, I'd like to ask one sort of quickest question actually for Deep and Scott in particular before I open up to you. But if you're an entrepreneur, you try and sort of think forward, maybe 3+ years ahead, and think about what the industry is going to be. So Deep and Scott, and I don't mind who goes first, if you were thinking about one or two major changes that are going to happen in the mobile world during that time, what would you sort of think about? Is everybody going to be using an iPhone? Or is everything going to be free so that you turn on your phone and you get advertisements coming at you? You're going to be watching live TV. I don't know, maybe something even bigger than that, but will you know where I am at all times because of GPS web? I know, just give me a couple of thoughts. I know. Scott, do you want to go first?
Well, I think the thing that's going to have the biggest impact on all of those things you just mentioned is I think a couple of years from now we're going to see carriers with flat rate data pricing, and I think that's going to have a fundamental impact on what we can do with phones today. If you think about the way you charge for services today, you can, there are some examples where you can get flat rate data pricing. For the most part, you pay as you eat, and so you're going to be a bit conservative in terms of the types of applications you're going to be willing to embrace, or the types of usage that you'll actually have in these devices. And the flat rate pricing that is available today is prohibitively expensive for the majority of people, at least if you think about the value proposition relative to the types of applications you can use it for. So I think that's going to change, and what that's going to mean is we're going to be able to open the door a whole bunch of applications that will, I think, be very profound. And I think you mentioned some, Janice, that I think are quite exciting. And I think things that, for instance, that the Sling Box is doing will be, it's very, very interesting, where you have the ability to view your content wherever you are, whenever you want to on your mobile phone. And I think those things will be, applications like that will be very pervasive. We're obviously biased on the media consumption of mobile phones with our investment in a company called Mobi TV that does live television to handsets. And we've got about, I think the last reported number is about 1.5 million people that pay anywhere from $3 a month to $10 a month to watch TV on their handset. We got an investment in a company called Amped Mobile that is an MVNO that's doing mobile content. And I think that we've got, in the history of the company so far, with 100,000 subs, we have something like 50 million video streams that have been served. So, I think that these devices will become kind of converged media devices, and you're going to be doing all kinds of things on these things you might not have done otherwise. So,
Deep. Yeah. Thanks, Scott.
So, I get asked this question a lot, and I'm always very worried to answer that question, right? Because I came into the Valley in '99 to start my own company, and one of the things that wise folks like Janice, my investors at that time, they funded my company. I was an enterprise software guy, But they said, hey, wireless is really hard. Why don't you look at that? And I'm like, hey, you're paying me the money. I'll look at whatever you ask me to look at. And so I did. I spent like 6 months really immersing myself in the whole mobile space. And the epiphany came to me one day when I was going down 101 between, essentially the Embarcadero exit and the Sunnyvale exit, and my voice call dropped 3 times on my mobile. And I'm like, this is bullshit, right? Sorry, I'm on tape.
It's okay. We can bleep it.
Post-processing, post-editing.
Yeah, but if you can do voice calls, you can never do serious data on this device. And frankly, we are sort of, we can do data just fine right now. It still breaks, right? So it's always difficult to answer that question. I think although fundamentally 2 things will happen in the next 3 to 5 years. One is that the current keypad generation, they are in their high school years right now. They don't have a lot of disposable income. They're going to start getting into college, start making money. They don't do email. They text. They do a lot of things on their phones. And fundamentally, that will change the usage pattern, and they will generate pull for kinds of services that we haven't even thought about yet. Right? If you really want to see this in action, go watch, don't go around even the undergrad campus around you. Go to a high school, go to Gun across the street, right, and see what the kids there are doing. And you'll see some fundamentally different behaviors. That's number one. Number two, the mobile will go, especially in this country, and it's already that way in Asia and other parts. It will go away from being a device that you really want your phone company to subsidize because you don't pay $300 for it, to something that will become a fashion accessory, very much like a watch or a purse or what have you. You'll carry more than one of them, and you will change them rather frequently, but you will pay for them. That's the important dynamic that will change. When you start paying for your phone, all of a sudden you've taken the power away from one of the most powerful players of this ecosystem who's subsidizing it for you. And the people who are making these phones and want to sell them to you will need to differentiate, and they will differentiate not just by looks and colors and form factor. They will differentiate with what's on that device preloaded when it gets to you. That's when software will eventually start. The innovation cycle on software is going to become very, very rapid.
That's what's so exciting about the iPhone. It's the first step in that direction.
How many of you here are looking towards buying an iPhone when it comes out in the summer? We'll see. Okay. Can I open up to questions from the audience? Any questions? Yes, please.
So, us entrepreneurs here in the Silicon Valley, we're starting out in the mobile space. We typically think that we're going to start something here, focus on this market, and then think of expanding globally. Whereas, now the mindset's changing. It's more, how do you go global? So my question is twofold. One is, right now the phone seems to be in the U.S. just a sidekick to your computer. It's something that you do on your phone, but you can really do that on your computer as well. Is that ever going to change in the U.S. in the near future? And number two, how a lot of the VCs that I go to, they talk about, show me the money. If you're developing this device, show me how you're going to generate money from this application. And typically my answer is like, oh, I'm going to spam my users, and that's how I'm going to generate money. Or I'm somehow going to sell advertising, but I don't know how yet. So what's the direction? Is it going to be, similar to the internet, or is it going to be a completely different set?
Okay, so 2 questions there. One was really, is the US going to change in terms of the phone being a sidekick to the computer, to being something more like it is in other parts of the world? And I think we've sort of addressed that when we talk about the younger generation, actually, but maybe we can do that. And then also, how you build a global business from here, and the business models. I think there are a bunch of things we talked about. So who would like to address any one of those? Jim?
I'll start with part of it. One is, I'm going to say something that may shock some of you. I believe the U.S. is today the most advanced wireless country in the world. Why? Number one, what do people use phones for? They talk to other people. If you want to measure penetration, you would measure how many minutes per month per pop or per person is consumed. The United States has 80% penetration, 750 minutes per month. Multiply that out, that's about 600 minutes per month per pop. Germany, which represents Western Europe, is at 80 minutes a month per pop. Japan, per pop, is at about 125 minutes a month per pop. So one of the ways I measure how advanced the country is how much they use the product. You made a great point about flat broadband rates. With what Sprint and Verizon offer with their EVDO Rev 0, and soon they're rolling out EVDO Release A, they're the one networks in the world which offer you unlimited broadband access. One thing I wanted to say, I forgot, is that it said out front to turn off your Blackberries. Well, since I have good in my Treo, I don't have to turn it off, right?
Thanks, Jim. Keep it on. Keep it on.
But this phone has unlimited broadband for free. It comes just part of my voice plan. I was in Europe a few weeks ago. Have a GSM phone for those emergency trips, and got a notice that if I were to use the data services GPRS over there, I figured out what it would cost. It came out to about $10,000 a gigabyte. Okay.
So can I ask Joel, maybe, Joel, if you were going to start a new business today, would you start it here, and how would you address some of those global issues?
You know, that's one of the things that bothers me about this business, because I have 2 small kids and I don't want to be on a plane that much. The way I would do things is, first I would find something that I think is so fundamental and exciting I forget about every other part of my life, which is usually how you have to start, because it's going to be really hard. And then I think what I would find out was, if I just used that as a motivator, that I would find more ready markets outside of the U.S. to go do it. And also, to answer the other question, at that point I wouldn't know how I was going to make money. I would just think, this is going to fundamentally change how people behave. It's going to change people's lives. And I know people are going to use the hell out of whatever I'm doing. And so, I actually want to hear how Scott feels about that. If he's an entrepreneur who's really onto something but doesn't know how they're going to make money, does he stop them if they can't show him how? Because
it's always advertising.
Because we did good didn't figure out how they were going to make. We had 10 different ways we were going to make money by the time we figured out something. But what I have a feeling that the first evidence of real new companies that get their own turf, that get their own users, it'll happen largely outside of the U.S. first.
So Scott, what about the show me the money question?
Yeah. Well, actually, the reality is I think we've seen a clear path to monetizing a lot of these applications to date in the mobile space. And one of the things that's beautiful about mobile as opposed to online is that the consumer's been trained to pay for applications, content, and services. And so we get to exploit that. The problem is it's a drug. It hooks you, first of all, it hooks you up to the carrier, and you basically need to work with the carrier because the carrier is going to be the guys that are going to bill and collect your revenue for you. And 2, I think it's a short-term phenomenon that actually ultimately constrains the ability to get broad adoption of these applications. So where do you go from there? Well, I do think advertising is going to be an interesting model that's going to emerge, but it's going to be something that is going to emerge quite slowly. And if you think about your ability to monetize your traffic in mobile, it's going to be a fraction of what you can do online. As a result, it's not going to yield huge opportunities. So I'm not sure that I have a great answer in terms of what the answers are going to be for these broad applications. The company we're investing in now is a very, very sticky application that has a tremendous amount of traffic, but the majority of what people use the application for, they don't pay anything for. But we found a very high-value application where people are willing to pay money for a specific value proposition that saves them a lot of money, particularly international long-distance, international SMS. And we're going to be able to monetize these guys very effectively that way. So I don't know. The folks who are coming in that are pitching things like, we've seen a lot of media sharing, social networking things that are being built for mobile. I think those are going to be very, very challenging to monetize in a way that's attractive anytime soon.
Yeah. Other questions? Yes, please.
This is a question actually primarily for Deep. In terms of people talk about municipal Wi-Fi, and you've seen sort of some noise about Google getting involved in it, at least at the local level. What are your thoughts in terms of, without talking specifics, right, at a macro level? How does that affect, from the consumer standpoint, mobile video moving forward?
So,
Can you repeat the question?
yeah, sure. So the question is, Muni Wi-Fi and how it impacts consumer behavior and things like mobile video, etc. I think Muni Wi-Fi, from a Google standpoint anyway, it's a great experiment on our part to go learn how people would react to a market like this, right? So if you think about the San Francisco part, Earthling and Motorola are doing all the work. We have 2 people on it. We've probably gotten most publicity. So as far as our ROI goes, it's excellent, right? From a marketing standpoint. we actually don't know what the answer is. If you think of the dynamic of having to go, the Muni part is very important on Wi-Fi. Every municipality, every sort of city, every township has their own way of doing it. So no state, certainly not at the federal level, can anyone mandate saying, thou shalt have this. And it's like having a mobile phone, but not being able to use it in many parts of the country, which was the case a decade ago here. It becomes very spotty, unless you're going to stay in one place and use it for something. So you can't do scale, is really what I'm trying to tell you. And any play where you require a lot of users, you need to be able to do it at scale. Jim may have more thoughts based on the whole rural broadband initiative and so forth.
Sure. In fact, we announced very recently we acquired a firm called Go Networks, whose business is improving Muni Wi-Fi networks. They've developed an advanced access point that can be deployed in municipalities. It cuts the CapEx and OpEx, the capital expenditure and operating expenses, by 30 to 50%. That goes right to the bottom line of the network provider. The second is it increases the capacity of the network 2 to 4x over existing Wi-Fi networks. That's huge. So you've got a better experience. And third is it penetrates buildings deeper than today's Wi-Fi signals, and it's based off of adaptive beamforming technology. We're very excited about this. We're in an interesting situation. We own licensed spectrum for all of Germany. We own spectrum for covering 250 million people in the United States. So usually you have this religious war. If you own licensed spectrum, you're all for it. We actually are big proponents of unlicensed spectrum. And we view a network of licensed spectrum overlaying unlicensed spectrum. The way we got involved with Go was we were looking to deploy Wi-Fi networks around the world. We tested everybody's equipment out there, and it's like the old expression, we like the shaver so much we bought the company. Their technology works so much better than everyone else out there. We wanted to help accelerate and bring it to market. So I think you're going to see, because of these kinds of breakthroughs in technology that makes unlicensed even more valuable, an acceleration of municipal networks. I'll say the hardest aspect of it is, which you pointed out, you're working through town by town, city government by city government, and San Francisco is not the only place that has city politics. Every place does, including where I live. And you have to work through those, and that's the most expensive part, is responding to those requests for proposal and just developing and winning the confidence of the municipality.
What do you guys think of U.S. versus international? Obviously, you're very U.S. focused, but if you're an entrepreneur, what do you think about that?
Well, let's see. We have offices in Berlin, Switzerland, Tel Aviv, Mumbai, Seoul, Tokyo. So you're right, we are a very U.S.-centered company. But
fair enough.
We should come back to that.
That said, where do you see most of your growth coming from?
So for the WiMAX chipsets we're developing, 90% of it outside the United States, to give you a guess. Packet video, which is on more than 100 million cell phones around the world. Vast majority of those are outside the United States. The Muni Wi-Fi gear will probably be 75% U.S., 25% rest of the world. But until last year, you couldn't deploy Wi-Fi in Italy. It was against the law.
Okay, so look, so there's a big global trend here. So yeah.
Can you talk about your recommendations for working with carriers and when to do that as a startup? On the one hand, it's difficult to get mind share from the carriers when you don't really have a product and you're just starting out. But on the other hand, to be a very successful company, to look at Good or MobiTV or JamDad, these are all companies that have very tight relationships with carriers. So from a startup perspective, how would you kind of look at when is the right time to set up those carrier relationships? Okay,
so recommendations for working with carriers, and of course that is different wherever you are in the world as well, actually. And who is going to touch on that? So Joel, maybe you could give an answer, and then we'll move it to a couple of the other guys here.
Okay, if you've decided to work with carriers, number one, start working with them. So go into they all have application developer programs of some kind. Verizon has one with 1 million people. Go get in that. Don't bet your life on getting a deal with any one carrier, because these guys get reorged and things come and go. And then at the same time, hire somebody that knows people in there. Don't try to be coming in brand new, fresh faced into it. Spend money on somebody that you think has relationships there. And then you don't know, I mean, in this play, you don't really know if you're going to get it or not. And you just have to be ready for that and have, get it going with all 4 carriers and see what you can get. And realize that once you get the deal, have violence in your heart the whole time. Because how carriers run their business is basically with violence at some point. So don't worry about making friends. It's Machiavellian, and just be ready that once you get the deal, these guys will get reorged, they'll come and go. So you're buying yourself a life of grinding.
So Scott, what would you add to that? For your companies? I mean, you're looking at companies that don't necessarily have that dependence.
No.
Right?
Well, I mean, it sounds like he paints a very attractive picture. It sounds like fun, and it's right on. I mean, the majority of our portfolio in the wireless space is heavily dependent upon the carriers for distribution, customer acquisition, customer support. And at one point in time, we just started laughing and realized there's 5 people in the world that control, the destiny of 25% of our portfolio. And,
right.
and at some point in time, you're just, tired of sucking up to these guys. But he's right on. It's not a space that you can venture into you can't back into it. It's not something you do in a half-assed way. What you need to do, first of all, is to get as much done in the product that you can get done so that you can walk into one of these meetings and demonstrate that you've got something. It's not just something on paper. Because if it's something on paper, they're going to be great, keep it up. That looks good. We're real excited about it. We'll work with you. It's going to be fun. You're going to love working with us. And keep working on it and come back to me when it's done. And that's basically what will happen. You need to be at a point where when you engage with these guys, you're ready to start talking about the terms of a deal and understanding the specific requirements that they have for whatever it is that you're developing. Hire somebody, though.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. Hire somebody who knows how to work with them. So look, I want to just give a couple of people chances to ask questions here. Yeah.
Hi, I represent a mobile startup 411 Sync, which tries to solve the problem of mobile search. And I wanted to get your opinion or your vision on mobile search. What is mobile search? Is it really just mobile find more than search? How do you personalize mobile search?
Okay, so we should
get your thoughts on it.
So the question is about mobile search. So Deep, maybe you could start. And Scott, I know you have an investment, so
I could talk for more than the 3 minutes that we have.
Right, I'm sure.
On that topic. I think the answer is very different depending on whose problem you're trying to solve. That's number one, right? So don't try to create a solution that will try and solve everybody's problems. The second is just because of the form factor, the technology, the input-output issues, etc., people don't have a lot of time. The average session on a phone, a data session, is roughly like 2.5 minutes. The average session on a computer is 2.5 hours, right? You just can't compete. So don't make people do more work than necessary. That's number 2. The third is provide things in context. If someone's looking for movies, give them the list of movies where they are at. Don't do what we do on the desktop, which is we'll give you the Internet Movie Database because it's such a generic query, right? On the mobile phone,
I'd say some of us would like that on the desktop too.
Well, yes. Pull out your phone, Janice, and give me some more business here. So, that's the difference. So don't think that what solves the problem in one medium definitely solves the problem in the other medium.
So one quick question.
Yeah. I don't know if it's quick or not, but...
Well, we'll give a quick answer.
We've been claiming that WiMAX is going to be the alternate technology where it's going to be much open. But Sprint making a big investment, why do you believe that they're not going down the same route as virtualization networks?
So again, it's just reinforcing why WiMAX.
So I started by saying the 4th wave of wireless is OFDMA. WiMAX is the first community market. Sprint announced they're deploying WiMAX nationwide in the United States. But there are 2 more flavors of OFDMA coming. One is called LTE. That's going to come out of the ITU, which is a follow-on on HSDPA and UPA, which is GSM. And then Qualcomm has proposed something called in 3GPP2, EVDO Release C, and that will be OFDMA based. So all of these technologies are OFDMA based. I don't think WiMAX replaces the rest of the world any more than you still have analog phones being used today and TDMA phones being used. Think of it as strata, and then over time, ultimately it's going to be the lowest cost pipe. OFDMA is the lowest cost pipe, and WiMAX is the first ecosystem that's developed huge around the world support from carriers and equipment developers that makes it a self-fulfilling prophecy, frankly.
Yeah, I think one thing you see in the mobile world is very complicated, right? Proliferation of handsets, all these different networks, you have to deal with carriers, so hopefully you're up for it. So I have one last question to ask the panelists here because our time is up officially, but I'm sure we're all going to hang around and be able to answer questions offline. So, questions. Joel, what's your next company that you're going to start? What sector? What are you going to look at? Come on.
Consulting to get people into carriers.
You think?
Sold by auction.
Okay, that's probably not a bad one, actually. So, Jim, next technology that you're going to champion?
We've got a lot invested on our plate, so just keep doing what we're doing.
More WiMAX. You don't see anything else or a need for something, even if you haven't solved it yet?
You know, you can't make a list of things you've never thought of.
Okay. That's a good one. Okay, Deep.
There's a T-shirt in there somewhere.
Next products that we're going to see. I mean, you know, give us a sense. You might not be able to tell us exactly.
Right. Watch this space and see mobile becoming the next billion-dollar business for Google.
Wow. And how are you working with carriers?
We signed 25 deals in the last 12 months with major carriers and OEMs around the world. I think we're doing okay.
Okay, good. So, Scott, next investment. Sector.
In the mobile space, I would say probably something along the lines of mobile advertising or CRM technology allows carriers and advertisers to do a better job of understanding the customers.
We should talk, of course. So, do you think that investment will be here? Sourced here?
It could. Actually, I think there's a good chance that it would be because I think that the pedigree of people you're looking for here are some of the people that have done work in online advertising as well. So.
Good. All right, look, thanks to the panel here. I think it's been a great session.